Welcome to the Sunday Politics here in the West on this extraordinary morning. In the next 30 minutes, we'll be trying to make sense of the political earthquake that happened on Thursday, when huge swathes of the West Country voted out, while hundreds of thousands in places like Bristol, Bath and elsewhere voted to stay. A big divide has also opened up between younger and older voters, so we'll be at Glastonbury, where the result is still sinking in. What happens next in this political quagmire? We'll be asking some leading West Country figures. And here they are, a team who hopefully know the difference between their Article 50s and their elbows. James Gray, MP for Wiltshire, a Conservative who voted out, along with the entire county actually. Richard Ford from UKIP in Gloucester and a leading light in the Leave campaign. Thangham Debbonaire, Labour MP for Bristol West, a shadow minister in Mr Corbyn's team. And James Monk, who is from Business West, an organisation that represents commercial interests. Welcome to you all. James Gray, first of all, you voted out, you won narrowly. Is there a plan about what happens next?
Yes, there's a very clear plan about what happens next, and that is the whole country must come together, must calm down, must steady their nerves. The country decided what to do. The people have spoken, a brilliant democratic exercise. The people have spoken, they said we must leave, we must now steady back and consider carefully and quietly what happens next.
But the Prime Minister's gone, the Chancellor is nowhere to be seen, we don't know who the leader is going to be, the pound has sunk.
And bouncing back a bit.
Have you any buyer's remorse?
I think absolutely everybody who voted either way last Thursday woke up the following morning saying, I wonder if I did the right thing. And of course that's a natural reaction. Anyone who's absolutely dogmatic about these things is probably wrong. But the important thing now is we have decided what to do, the people have decided what to do, and the important thing now is to come to the right conclusion, the right exit from the European Union, re-establish leadership in the Conservative Party, sort out the Labour Party, because we want a good, strong opposition. I like an opposition, so we need to sort out the Labour Party properly too.
We'll let the Labour Party worry about themselves. First of all, so you woke up on Friday morning thinking, gosh, what have I done?
No, I've campaigned to leave the European Union for 40 years. I campaigned against joining in the first place, so I've been consistently a Brexiteer always, and I'm certain we did the right thing. But like anybody in a situation like this, any sensible, real, intelligent person will say, well, gosh, what is the future? What is going to happen next? And we have to find a way of making the best thing happen that we possibly can do.
Thangham Debbonaire from Labour, what are your feelings this morning?
Well, whenever someone tells me to calm down, it makes me worry about what it is they're telling me to calm down about. And I think that's part of the problem here. You asked James what the plan was, and it seems to me pretty clear that the government doesn't have a plan. The Prime Minister resigned on Friday, having been responsible for calling this referendum. I campaigned strongly for Remain because I believed it was in the best interests of workers' rights, environmental protection and growth for trade and jobs. OK, so we didn't win. Naturally, I'm devastated, but more importantly, my constituents are devastated. I need to help find a way with other people in other parties of how we get through this, but it's disturbing to me that the Prime Minister, the minute it happened, resigned, walked away and left the country, which it looks to me, without a plan. OK,
so now we need strong opposition, don't we?
Absolutely.
A team ready to go into government if necessary. That's what the job of the opposition is.
Yes.
So where is Mr Corbyn and what should he do?
We're in a difficult time, obviously. I mean, Hilary Benn was sacked by Mr Corbyn last night in the middle of the night. I think it's always difficult to see why we would take difficult decisions like that in the middle of the night. I think that's troubling. Heidi Alexander, who has played an absolute blinder over the junior doctors' contracts dispute, has resigned. This is not someone who takes decisions lightly. And there are revelations this morning, tonight in the press, about apparent alleged problems in the leadership's attitude towards the European Union campaign. Now, if true, that's a real problem for me. I had hundreds of activists who worked their socks off campaigning for Labour Party policy, which was to remain in the European Union. If true, if the allegations about Mr Corbyn are true, and I don't know yet if they are, that's a real problem, because what we need is someone who actually believed in party policy.
So you're saying that Mr Corbyn didn't have his heart in it, in fact didn't really want to win. Is that the allegation?
Those are the allegations. I am concerned that if they are true, that's a real problem, because we need, at the moment, to be going into a general election with a strong, commanding leadership team. And what the problem is at the moment is we've got cabinet shadow secretaries of state who are resigning because they don't have confidence in him. That's a problem, because these are people who, like me, served Mr Corbyn, have chosen to take up posts that he offered us willingly. We chose to put our shoulders to the wheel and work hard as a team. I've done that. Others have done that. But where we are at the moment is my campaigners worked their socks off in a campaign which, if true, if the allegations are true, if he didn't pull his weight, that's a real problem for me, and I'm very concerned about it.
OK, that sounds very much as if you're on the brink of resigning as a shadow minister.
I'm certainly not going to do anything precipitous. What I'm intending to do is to carry on listening to the views of my constituents. They've certainly been getting in touch with me over the weekend. And the overwhelming note from my constituents is one of sadness that we have chosen to vote leave as a country, because as a constituency, my constituency, Bristol West, overwhelmingly voted to remain. And they did so for reasons that they feel very strongly about.
What would it take to make you resign then?
I think what's more important is what's going on in the country. I mean, I think that's where...
But for you, I mean, you're obviously threatening it. What would it take to push you over the edge and say that's it?
I'm not making any threats, and I don't really respond terribly well to threats. I prefer to take a measured, cool, hard look at what's going on, and that's what I'm doing today. It's what I did yesterday. It's what I'll continue to do. Obviously, I will have to make a decision at some point, because if colleagues are resigning, that does indicate something really troubling. But the most important thing for me is that we are turning our fire as quickly as possible, and I'm already doing this, on the party that doesn't seem to have a plan for the country. The country is facing a really difficult situation. Where's the plan? I don't see it, and that's where the problem lies.
Well, hang on a second.
The Tory party is the party
not quite fair.
government.
The plan is the manifesto on which we were elected 12 months ago now, and that manifesto remains our manifesto. That's the plan for the next 5 years.
But there isn't a plan for what happens when we come out of the European Union.
Perhaps UKIP have got a plan, or have you not?
Well, of course we've got a plan. The fact of the matter is we just had a vote of no confidence, not only in the Conservative government, but also in the Labour opposition. The ordinary people of this country have risen up and said, finally, we've had enough. And the plan will be to leave the European Union, to bring everything back into this country's governance, the sovereignty of our own Parliament. We've got a civil war in the Conservative Party, a civil war in the Labour Party, no plan B.
Civil war in UKIP too, actually.
Well,
the Civil Party's only got one MP. It's quite hard to have a civil war, isn't it?
He's fallen out with leader. He and Mr
Farage. Just ask you,
are
Richard, this crucial
who and Mr
point.
Farage are at odds?
You're MP. You're an MP, and Mr Farage.
Well, one MP, 4 million votes. We don't need to go into that. But the fact of the matter is...
I just want to ask you this, because it's really important. A lot of people are itching to see that £350 million per week come into other services, including the NHS. When will that be delivered, and what will happen if it's not delivered?
Well, at the moment, we're still members of the European Union, so money will still be being paid to Brussels, clearly, for the next 2 years or however long it is until we exit. But once we do exit, then there will be more funds available to come into frontline services in this country.
And where's that going to go? Because we've heard people have recanted over the weekend.
Well,
money that was supposed to be spent on the NHS, where is that actually going to go?
I'm not sure they have recanted, actually, to be honest with you, Thangham. The fact of the matter is, whatever savings are made...
Mr Farage said he wouldn't have campaigned on that.
Well, no. Obviously, Farage was... You haven't been able to answer the question.
Well,
it will go to frontline services, National Health Service, schools, hospitals, housing. And Farage was not part of Vote Leave. It's a different Tory-run organisation.
Folks, we're live this morning and we've got a lot to get in, so I have to stop you there. But it is fair to say that for many revellers at the Glastonbury Festival, news of Brexit was about as welcome as a heavy downpour. Let's bring in James Monk from the business community here in the West Country. Paddy's rather gloomy assessment of the economic effects. Do you go along with that? Do you think there's going to be sort of long-term as well as short-term damage?
I really hope there isn't going to be long-term damage. And I think it's up to whoever's going to be leading these negotiations that we're now going to be having to make sure there isn't. They have to make sure that at the forefront of their negotiation is trade. It is making sure business needs to remain having access to the single market. This is paramount.
So if that meant that we had to accept the free movement of people, is that going to be acceptable to UKIP?
Well, I don't think it is, because the key issue of the free movement of people was the reason why so many people did vote for leave. I mean, it's all very well Paddy Ashdown saying he's a Democrat, then saying it's howls of rage and so on because people voted away he didn't want. But the fact is, the voters of this country, 17 million of them voted to leave. A clear majority, 52% is the majority. And of course, a key part was because they feel threatened, they feel they don't recognise their country any longer. That's what they did, and freedom of movement was a key part of that.
OK, let's bring in Thangham. I mean, the people who didn't vote to remain, of course, in the West Midlands, in the North East, the Labour heartlands. Is he right that they simply immigration was one of their main problems, and that the Labour Party just didn't talk to them about that?
Immigration came up on the phone banks when I was campaigning over the last few months, and in my own constituency of Bristol West, people contacted me overwhelmingly saying we want to be an outward-facing country, we value our European visitors, we value the fact they come here to study and work and pay taxes, and we also value the fact that young people in this country can go and study, work, pay taxes in anywhere else in the Union.
But that's your constituency.
But that wasn't it. But that wasn't raised enough.
Which has the highest number of graduates in the UK.
It certainly does, and that was missing. That was missing in the debate, and that was missing throughout. So different aspects of immigration were definitely missing from the debate in the European referendum campaign, and I regret that bitterly, because what's happened is people have now voted, as Richard says, lots of them have voted because of immigration and their fears about that, without those fears being properly addressed. Because if we're going to stay in that trading bloc, we will still have to have free movement of people, and I think a lot of them didn't really understand what the consequences of that were.
But is it time for a change of tone by Labour, talking to these white working class men and women who feel that their country isn't the country that they knew and they grew up in?
And times do change, yes, and I understand why people find it difficult. I also understand why people who are facing a housing crisis, who can see their sons and daughters not able to step on the housing ladder or get social housing, are troubled by that. But the guns were turned on the wrong culprits. We have a housing crisis because we don't have enough homes, we aren't building enough homes, we're not making enough affordable homes. When people say they're blaming the immigrants, that's really troubling, it's disturbing, and it is rousing. I'm sure the gentlemen here aren't part of this, but it is rousing a really troubling far-right ring.
But James Gray, I mean, we're talking about immigration numbers, and now some people are saying, actually, we're not going to be cutting immigration at all, really. Is that how you see it? What would you be disappointed if those numbers didn't come down?
Of course. I mean, a very large part of the campaign has been about immigration, and we have had 1.5 million extra people in this country in the last 10 years, and 1.5 million extra people means bigger pressure on houses, or bigger pressure on doctors, surgeons, and schools. Of course we must see immigration coming down. 300,000 a year at the moment, half of them from the EU and half of them from elsewhere. That's far too many. We cannot accommodate that.
So what number would you expect from the EU?
That's what we don't want to be tempted into a numbers game, but what we are doing is saying, let's take back control of our own border so we can decide how many people we want to come here, who they should be, how long they should come here. But a numbers game is a sort of, doesn't make any sense, but we need to control it.
How are you going to run the NHS?
You have controlled immigration.
10% of the NHS workforce comes from the EU.
Absolutely.
10%.
Absolutely.
I've just had hospital treatment. I wouldn't want to do without any of those people.
No one's saying that.
Skilled.
No one is saying that.
100% agree.
People are saying that.
100% agree.
You get rid of free movement of people. Where's that?
No one is against immigration per se.
100% agree with you, Thangham. You're absolutely right. Nobody's saying don't bring in people to work in the NHS.
Well, I think they
of course
are.
they are.
No, they're not.
What we're saying is we must decide, Parliament must decide
It's not exactly the welcome
who brings them
match,
in.
though, is it?
Well, we decide who it is. As we do with regard to...
But people are welcome from the EU or from further afield. There are jobs here.
Brazil, Australia,
yes, if there's a job and it's controlled, fine.
James, you're the only non-politician here. You've been sitting there rather quietly. I will bring you in before we finish again, I promise.
Thank you, because business actually does care drastically about having skilled workforce.
Cheap
it is
labour.
vital.
Sure.
No, not cheap labour. Cheap labour plays its role. Valued labour, but skilled labour. We will not have successful companies
told off for
without
not moving on. Sorry. Because we've got to pause just for a minute and think about what happened on Thursday and why Leave defied expectations, quite frankly, and secured a victory both nationally and here in the west of England. Here's Paul Baltrop.
They were dubbed the People's Army. Ordinary folk, many new to politics, who worked for a Leave vote. For every one who came campaigning, many, many more were won over by referendum day.
Leave won the referendum because they successfully mobilised a particular section of British society, economically disadvantaged, mainly white, older English voters who live outside of London but do not feel as though they've been winning from globalisation, from European integration, and who wanted to send a very strong message on identity concerns like immigration.
Places like Bridgwater, the Somerset town that saw the West's biggest vote to leave.
I don't think we really knew what we were talking about when we went into it. I really got the impression we might be better off out of it.
I think we're better off out, hoping to start up again.
I'd like to be able to control our own immigration.
The media coverage was also important. Vote Leave's battle bus and its blonde bombshell proved a big hit. His comedic, folksy style on the streets went down well. In a different arena, Boris Johnson got a rougher ride with Remain's debaters, but still managed to get in the last and most memorable word.
And if we vote Leave and take back control, I believe that this Thursday can be our country's Independence Day.
He was so much more powerful, so much more emotive. It left that message ringing in the voters' ears.
Jenny Lloyd studies the way politicians sell themselves and their message. She reckons the gloomy warnings of the economic consequences of Brexit were eclipsed by the other side's passion.
When it comes to decision making, so often emotion is what you feel before you get to reason. And so when it comes to very complex and difficult questions, you will go with what's known as your gut feel.
The lack of passion for the Remain cause was often clear. A month ago, they booked this hall in Bristol for a rally with leading politicians from 4 parties, including Paddy Ashdown. In the event, just 50 turned up to watch.
Their earnest speeches echoed around the hall. There was no cheering or fervour. Contrast that with a few days earlier for a UKIP rally in Cheltenham. For Leave, the key message was memorable.
Vote Leave and to take back control.
Take back control.
Take back control.
Is it not time we took back control?
Now they look set to take control and try to turn rhetoric into reality.
Right, well, I'll try and take back a bit of control here. James, let me bring you in from the business community once more quickly. How quickly do you think we need political stability and decisions made?
We need stability before the markets open on Monday morning, really. We need a plan to be laid out of how we will be entering into negotiations. I don't think the business community is saying necessarily Article 50 needs to be put in place straight away. We need to be talking, we need to be negotiating to make sure this divorce, whilst the Germans are saying it's not going to be punitive, divorces are very rarely friendly. They get acrimonious. Trade is vital, and trade will be one of the key bargaining points.
Do you see
as
job
well
losses
access
in the
and
West?
migration.
Do you see job losses in the West?
If we get it wrong, yes.
How many?
It could be thousands. It will be thousands if we get it wrong. If we get it right and build on the strength of the businesses in the southwest, their tenacity, the fact that overseas markets love British products, we need to be doing what the Brexiteers have been campaigning on, of not just addressing the European market, going out and looking at the rest of the world, but making sure we've still got access to the single market.
Let's bring in James Gray. James, who's the next Prime Minister going to be? We've almost forgotten that all this happening. We've lost the Prime Minister.
Before we do that, I very much agree with James. We have to get the trade thing sorted out. Although bear in mind that 96% of all businesses don't export. Only 4% do. So
James, the vital thing is, yes, they don't truly export. Their goods and services do not go to overseas market. But we now in the southwest are so engaged in pan-European supply chains.
Okay.
Yes. Well, of course.
I want to know who the next Prime Minister is.
I'm going to answer the question very, very straightforward in a negative sense. It's not going to be me. I hope that's a first. You heard here first.
I think there may be a
beyond
few
that. There are 34 people of my colleagues, I think. No, relief, David. That's a terrible thing to say. How many years have we known each other for? You ought to be saying, no, James, please do.
Oh well, yes, perhaps we could. That would give us a good story.
There are 34 of my colleagues who are showing interest. We need someone who will bring the party together, bring the country together, come up with a plan that the other James was talking about a moment ago, and indeed that Thangham was talking about.
Is it right?
And take the country forward.
Is it right that we're going to be presented with a new Prime Minister, elected by members of the Conservative Party, and we have no say over it?
Well, of course, that's what happened both with regard to John Major and also with regard to Gordon Brown. That's the nature of the beast, is that the party decides who our leader is.
We can elect a Prime Minister 1 year previously and then suddenly have a new one.
1 year ago you didn't elect a Prime Minister. 1 year ago you elected the Conservative Party on the basis of the Conservative Party manifesto. Our leader at that time happened to be David Cameron, but just as we removed Margaret Thatcher mid-term and replaced her with John Major, we're doing the same thing today.
OK. We're just hearing the reports, not confirmed, that Kerry McCarthy, the Shadow Environment Secretary, has considered her position and is considering quitting. What do you expect today to be happening?
I think it's going to be a challenging day. I think a lot's going to happen. I think a lot of people are going to be thinking really hard about how we have a strong opposition to what's going on, what the government are doing without their plan, and how we're going to defend workers' rights, environmental protections, and all the other things that matter so much. And if there's going to be a general election, we need to be match fit to win it.
Do you think there should be a general election?
Well, I mean, that's a matter for whoever takes over as leader of the Tory party.
OK. Do you think Mr Corbyn will be here in place next week?
I couldn't possibly say.
OK. Are you happy? You're pleased?
Well, To answer your last question of Thangham, yes, I do think there should be a general election. This duopoly, the Labour-Conservative duopoly, has run this country for nigh on 100 years, pretty much, and brought us to this pass. You know, so many people feel unrepresented, and now is the time for an election.
Sorry, so brief our time. That's it. What a Sunday. Let's go back to Andrew in London. Bye-bye.